following is my own true story from my personal experience. They do not speak on behalf of the United States Marine Corps or any other U.S. Marine.
What happens when you get way too comfortable disrespecting people because you think nobody can do anything about it? There was a corporal by the name of Richard at 29 Palms who made a habit of hazing the shit out of new Marines and just harassing people in general. This dude had already shoved me into a sewer and was pretty much hated by everyone under him, and because this is the Marines and he outranked us, most of the time we just had to take it. Until one night I watched this dude get punched in the face so hard that his teeth literally bounced across the ground. This is that story. Welcome to episode 15 of Marine Corps Chronicles, and while you don't need to watch the first video to understand this one, this is still technically a part 2 to the story of Corporal Richard. All you need to know about this guy is that we first met on a working party, and this guy power tripped like I had never seen before, with this story taking place a few weeks after the events of the first encounter. Again, more context in that other video, but you don't need to watch it to understand this one. Also, a very important announcement. I'm starting my full-time master's at Northwestern University this fall, and I'm also going to Namibia at the end of this month, or right now, depending on when you're watching this. And so here's my Instagram if you want to follow me there, where you can get more of a, I guess you can say, sneak peek into my day-to-day activities. And I have no intention to stop making content. The only real change is that there might be certain weeks where I need to lock in and study, network, laser recruiter, or just something like that, which might delay a video. I hope y'all understand. And with that being said, let's get into the story, but first we need to set the scene. On a sunny day in 29 Palms, which is pretty much every day since we're in a desert, I and a group of others were placed into a working party to clean up the base. We had to clean up these wire fences surrounding some buildings that people were standing by when they're not supposed to in order to smoke instead of going to the smoke pit. And under these fences were little holes that either people or some kind of animal dug, and in these ditches would be more cigarette butts and more trash, and so we were tasked with cleaning them all out. And so we're just picking up trash when I see a figure in the corner of my eyes walking down along the fences, and guess what? It's Corporal Richard. And this dude was hard to miss because this dude was pretty wide horizontally. Like I said in my other video, this dude was always smoking on something. Bro had these packs of Newports, or at least I think they were. They had the blue tints to them and all that. And I always remembered him holding something to smoke every time he went outside. This dude also vaped and dipped. He is nicotine loaded. His fingertips, the ones he used for smoking, would be black all the time, since if he didn't have Newports, I would see him rolling his own tobacco and he would smoke it out until like the little nubs things were burning his fingers and it looks like he was about to be lit on fire. He comes outside and he doesn't see me, and I kind of move over behind a tree because the last thing I want is this dude hazing the shit out of me while I'm just trying to go watch a movie after work. He stands by one of those ditches I mentioned earlier, and he's maybe at 30-40 meters away from me when I see him light something up and he starts puffing away. I go back to what I'm doing, and it's common enough to see boots like us cleaning stuff around this area, and so I figured if I gave him a reason not to, he would just leave me alone. I see him finish his cigarette, roll up Black and Mild, whatever it was, toss it along the fences, and he starts walking back towards the building. Not long after, we get lunch, come back, and get right back to work. I'm just daydreaming, picking up trash at different sections of the fence, not thinking too much, when I hear a voice say, "Hey devil." Our group looks up and there's Corporal Richard. Now I'm not sure if he saw me and walked over or if he was just taking another smoke break and just happened to run into me, but we make eye contact and he doesn't say anything to me directly, but this entire group had met Corporal Richard before, and so he doesn't like any of us. He makes us stand in parade rest as he whips out a pack of Newports, and as he lights up and turns his body a little to block out the wind, all of us standing there just kind of glance at each other like, man, this rat bastard is back at it again. He starts blowing clouds of smoke into our faces, and this was a classic Corporal Richard move. And since we can't move, we're once again being held hostage by Mr. Thlump. This dude starts yipping and yapping. I don't know if I mentioned this in the first video either, but bro is the kind of guy who can't read the room and tell when to stop talking. Back in my day, back in the old Corps, blah blah blah. He's rambling on, and it would have been one thing if we asked or if we were chill with him or kicking it like that, but nobody liked this dude, junior enlisted or NCO for that matter. It's just that as boots, we can't run away. And so as he's standing there blabbing away, blowing smoke into our faces, he finally finishes his cigarette, flicks in our direction, and thankfully the wind was blowing the other way, and then he pulls back out a pack of dip, and then he packs the thing, shoves under his lip, and he walks back towards the building. We're still standing at parade rest, so once Richard is a couple paces away with his back turned towards us, we break parade rest and get back to cleaning. And just as we break parade rest, and this dude must have been watching in the corner of his eyes or just sensing our movement or something, because he comes storming back to us looking pissed as hell. He starts screaming at the entire group of how we were told by a Corporal of Marines to stand at parade rest and how we weren't dismissed, and I'm thinking, oh my fucking god, just leave us alone. There ain't no way you don't have anything better to do. He proceeds to either spit his dip spit or a chunk of his dip. Oh, and for those who don't know, when you dip, you start salivating and usually you spit into a bottle or can or something. I don't dip either, so something like that. And this dip spit lands right at the cuff of where you blouse your boots on a dude called Jimenez, who was just standing out in the front. I'll use his real name since there's a lot of people named Jimenez in the Marines. This was a chill ass dude. He didn't bother anyone. He actually introduced me to Mole, which I still love to this day because his family either used to run or still runs a restaurant in Oaxaca to this day. Anyways, I can tell Jimenez is livid, as he should be, because there's like dip spit running down between his trouser pant cuff area, and he's trying to control every fiber of his body to not knock out Corporal Richard, and Richard was not a small guy, but Jimenez also had pretty good hands since he used to box a lot. Every time Richard goes to spit a glob of his dip shit at us as he's chewing us out, I'm just making calculations on the odds of Jimenez decking Richard if another glob of spit lands on him. And finally, Richard tells us to get back to cleaning after about maybe like 20 minutes or so of us just standing there not doing shit, and he actually walks back into the building this time. For the time that had passed since our previous encounter at the sewer, Corporal Dick is now fresh in my mind, and none of us were too happy about seeing him. That weekend comes along, and most of the people who were with me during that working party decide that we want to get away from base a little bit and head to a bar. Now, there's this bar in the Joshua Tree, Yucca Valley area that is known to let military personnel under 21 drink there, and it's usually really easy to tell if someone is military or not, even if they're not in uniform, especially if they're boots, because they have what is called a high and tight haircut and just dress in a certain way that you can tell. And if the right person is working at this restaurant bar, they'll give you a beer or mix you a drink as long as you're not causing like trouble or anything like that, or there's a cop staring at you. And I don't know if they still do, but this was a pretty popular area. I'm not going to say more than that in case YouTube thinks I'm giving a guide to underage drinking or something like that and nukes his channel. And at the time, we may or may not have been all under 21, and so this spot was a go-to. That Friday comes around and there's 6 of us, including 2 civilians who are friends of friends, and one of them offered to be the DD while the other just wanted to tag along. We get to this bar, and like I said, they don't ID us when we come in, only if we order drinks, and since we knew one of the bartenders, let's just say I ended up with a Moscow Mule in front of me and a bucket of beers on the table, nothing crazy, and some onion rings. It's a Friday evening, and we got there kind of early, and so we're just all talking, and so some time passes, and now things are picking up. And it is when things are picking up that a friend nudges me to look at the main entrance, and I notice Richard with one of his buddies walk into the restaurant bar. In 29 Palms, there are only so many places to go around the general vicinity of the base, especially when all you have is weekend liberty. And Joshua Tree, the Yucca Valley area, that was a hot spot, and if you know, you know. So it wasn't that crazy seeing Richard or other Marines around this area. It was more so of a, I do not want to deal with this guy tonight kind of reaction from all of us. We're more worried that Richard was going to spot us with drinks, and since he knew we were underage, reported to the chain of command, and then we were probably going to get an NJP or worse. So we decided to just sit at our tables they had us at and keep it low key instead of walking around, or at least until we finish our drinks. Richard and his buddy sit at the bar, and none of them have spotted us. They take a seat, and Richard has his back towards me. I can see the car keys clipped to his belt loops dangling over the stool. We start joking, explaining to the people who weren't there who Richard was, and since most of us were on that working party earlier that week, most of us felt some type of way towards him. We're chilling. I got a buzz, and we're just sitting at this table talking with each other when I hear Richard's voice get louder and louder. This is not a smooth jazz cigars kind of bar. It's more of a sports bar jam-packed full of people with music and all that, although thankfully not those bars that blast music so loud that you have to scream to talk to each other. And no offense if that's the stuff you're into. Richard's voice draws my attention like when you hear a familiar voice in a crowd of strangers, but since his back is towards me, I can't really make out what he's saying. At this point, I'm also not sure if he's raising his voice out of anger or anything like that, or maybe it was just the sound waves bouncing off the walls and making it sound weird, not to mention I can't see his face. I go back to talking, but now I'm kind of eyeing Richard to see what all the noise is all about. To his left is the buddy that arrived with him, and to Richard's right is a dude in blue polos and chinos, and this dude looks like a civilian with his hair grown out and all that, although he had a very athletic, like you can tell this guy worked out. I then hear Richard raise his voice again, and this time he and his buddy both stand up, and it looks like they're about to square up and throw hands before a bunch of people pull them away from each other. There's still music playing, but lots of the random conversations have died down, and the entire place has their eyes on them. And not gonna lie, I was hoping to see Richard get into a fight then and there and get front row seats. They separate the two, nobody gets kicked out, and eventually everyone goes back to chatting. But while this is all going down, Richard glances around the room, probably looking at everybody eyeballing him, and his eyes flick onto our table, and he stares at me and everyone there before glancing away. We think we are fucked. Richard most definitely would report us to the chain of command, but at least at this point, it was our word against his, although he could definitely pull rank. And so before Richard got a chance to snap a picture of us at the crime scene, whatever open beers we didn't drink, the guys wearing hoodies grabbed those unopened beers and tucked them underneath their hoodies, and thankfully, since we already paid for a tab, we all scramble out of the bar. We spill out into the front entrance, and it's really not that late for a Friday night. It's like 9 or 10 p.m., something like that. So we all decide to just chill out from the restaurant bar and off a little bit to the side so we aren't blocking the main entrance or standing in plain view, and just sip on a few beers that we open with those little keychain bottle openers and just wait for Richard to leave, and then we head back in, or at least that was the plan. One of the girls with us, who's a civilian, pulls out a joint or blunt, I forget, and sparks it up, and so we all tuck ourselves into a little side street next to the place to be more discreet, but you could still see the main entrance from where we were standing. At least 30 minutes go by, if not more, when I hear a bunch more commotion. I turn and I see the front door of the bar open and a crowd of people come spilling out. Most of them are backing up and they have their heads turned towards the bar, which is strange if all they were doing is leaving, and so we all start heading towards the noise to see what's happening. As we get closer, there's a mob of people surrounding something or someone that I can't make out, and as the mob clears the entrance choke point and spills out into the street, the circle of people opens up. I'm probably 10 paces or so away when I see Richard with one of his buddies squaring up with the dude in the blue polo that I mentioned earlier. I barely have time to register even what I'm looking at when I see a dude with the blue polo bring a fist across Richard's face. In Richard's defense, I would find out later that he was blind drunk this entire time. I don't think he even registered the fist coming towards him. I hear something pitter patter on the concrete and I glance down and it looks like someone threw like mini dice pieces in the dark plinking across the ground. It almost sounds like if you took a handful of plastic BBs and chucked them at a gym floor. I lean in and I look closer at one of these mini objects that landed around me, and it's the evening, but there's light from the surrounding environment. And then I realize that it's human teeth. I look up again and the crowd has pulled everyone apart. My friends around me also saw and heard the teeth land nearby, and so they're also going like, what the fuck is going on? Someone in the crowd was a nurse or has some kind of medical background, because once everyone is under control, he starts collecting teeth on the ground like goddamn Easter eggs. Because apparently, if you put in the teeth back in the mouth fast enough, and if it's not too damaged or too long, you could get it reattached. Although at the time, I didn't even know you could do that, so I just kind of assumed this guy went a little nutty and started collecting souvenirs. A bunch of police and ambulances start pulling up, and since we reek of alcohol and probably all smell like some of that California gas, we quickly dip out there before they start asking too many questions. The next time we come back to the bar, we find the bartender we were chill with, and he starts telling us what happened. Apparently, when Richard and his buddy showed up at the bar, they took a seat next to the guy with the blue polo that also had a nice watch on. Richard and his buddy must have felt some type of way about this watch, because as the night goes on, they're harassing this guy just trying to get a drink. They're saying that the watch is fake. They're making slick little comments like, I didn't know someone like you could have a watch like that, and they're just getting real greasy with their mouths. The first time they pull Richard and the dude apart, and they just kind of leave him alone at their own sections of the bar. But as Richard is drinking, he's getting more and more belligerent and disrespectful until they finally cut him off and tell him to leave. As they're getting escorted out, either Richard or his buddy makes one last slick comment at the polo dude who is getting harassed the entire night before the polo dude swings and clips Richard's buddy in the nose, and then a full-on fight breaks out. They managed to drag all of them out, and then us chilling outside saw what happened next. That's right, this entire ordeal started because Richard and his buddy felt insecure or just some type of way about the dude sitting next to them having a nice watch. I wanted to tell the story because there is a lesson in all this. There are people who get real comfortable disrespecting and rage baiting others, and I'm not talking about some ball busting. I mean genuinely harassing people. Lots of people get away with it for many years. I mean, just look on the internet. But if you go around fucking with people, it's going to eventually catch up to you. Corporal Richard wasn't fit, but he was a big ass dude. Like it or not, he was used to going around messing with people, making slick, greasy comments, especially in the military when he had literal rank that he could pull and he could get away with it. And I'm sure he's been told by close friends and family about his behavior, but the reality is that some people in this world, you tell them something nicely, and while it doesn't automatically mean that they agree with you, they'll ponder it a little and use some rationale. Other people in this world, it's only when you start to scream and shout do they start paying attention. And finally, there are people in this world who only learn through blood. You tell them not to do something, in one ear and out the other it goes, and only when those words come with some blood do they go, oh, maybe I should listen and change my ways. Now, I'm not telling anyone here to start decking people on the street. What I'm saying is that you should strive to be the person who can learn and adapt without the need for escalation, which is something that at least I strive to be. As for Corporal Richard, the last thing I heard is that they couldn't save any of the teeth that got knocked out because the roots were too damaged and he had to get a bunch of dental work done. Follow me on Instagram and Twitch if you want to, as well as join the Discord, and I thank you so much for making it to the end. There are plenty of other Marine Corps Chronicle episodes, and this one is a part of the 100K special, which again, thank you guys so much for all the love and support. I hope to see you in the next video, but most of all, take care and